Hello students, we have reached towards the fourth lecture of the series of mass communication, and in the previous lectures we've basically learned about what is communication, the different types of communication. Then we've learned about the role of communication towards the society. Then we started off with the basic principles of communication and the various models and theories which goes towards making of a successful communication. However, in this lecture, we would be dealing into one of the most prominent modes of communication and what goes beyond the pedagogy of the various aspects of journalism at large. So basically, this lecture will enable you to understand the intricacies of mass communication. You will come across the introductory concepts of journalism, the early history of journalism. Then we'll also acquaint you with the journalism history in the Indian scenario. So basically, in this lecture today, we'll learn about journalism, what exactly is journalism, what is the role that journalists play in society, what takes it to be a journalist, and so on. We'll learn whether journalism is a mere craft or a profession. It is always debatable about whether journalism is a craft or a profession. Now, journalism itself requires a huge amount of skills, but is it merely a show of your skills or it goes beyond that? So, in the ever persistent debate of journalism as a craft or a profession, we'll see why journalism is a craft, why journalism is a profession, and finally, we'll know whether it's a profession or a craft. Then we'll come across tabloid journalism. I'm sure you're aware of the various kinds of tabloids which are available to you. We'll learn the origins of tabloid, how it came into being, and what made it different from the normal broadsheet papers. We'll deal with yellow journalism, which again is a sensational form of journalism. It does have a very striking relationship between tabloids and yellow journalism because whatever is published in the tabloid comes through the genre of yellow journalism. So we'll learn in detail about the two of that. Then we go to what is news, what are the criteria of news. We learn about journalism and public relation because we are aware of the fact that journalists act as the fourth pillar of democracy or the watchdogs of democracy. We'll see how journalism aids in development via the alternative or the public or the citizen journalism as an alternate media is called so. Then we'll see the role of press in India, the power of press, the different kinds of newspapers and tools for propagation of media which was created during the nationalist movements. Then we'll go into the history of Indian journalism, which will basically be a timeline from the early 1700s to the 1930s. So with that, we begin with what is journalism. Now, before going into the selective definition of journalism, let's see what journalism is according to various journalists. So for one journalist, a journalist is someone who is willing to disappoint himself with the truth. So we know that each journalist who goes into the public sphere has the job of finding out the truth. Now, the truth cannot be presented as it is and how it is unearthed. For that, a journalist needs to take the news, collect the facts and information, then do the necessary editing and steaming and present it to the public. in doing so, sometimes a journalist might have to go through manipulative forces which does not allow them to present the truth as they ought to be presented. We all know that every powerful media house has a certain degree to which it has an affiliation, an invisible thread of affiliation or allegiance towards the ruling parties. It is essential for their very existence, and in doing so, the journalist ends up on compromising the truth. So, a journalist is none but a person who is willing to disappoint himself with the truth. Again, for someone, a journalist is first and foremost a questioner. The journalist's primary duty is to question. The answers will come only when the appropriate questioning is done. Now, if for example, there has been a crash, now for a local citizen, the events of a crash would be as such that there was a crash and that's it. But for a journalist, the duty goes on asking how the crash happened, was there any intention for the crash for the crash to happen? Was there any foul play? Was there any aid which was given to the victims? And what is the follow-up of the story? So journalists' first and foremost duty is to ask a question. Why he asks a question? He asks a question to inform and to enlighten, to expand the dialogue, to probe and provoke, to stimulate and engage the show the way of the present another. So a journalist has to engage with the society. He has to go to that site of dispute, and the journalist has to ask questions, unearth the answer, present the unknown to the people as known, and so on. So what happens is, when the journalist is giving you a certain amount of facts, it is in turn encouraging the thought process in you. It's provoking you to think, and that is a very essential thought, because only if the journalist presents you would you be able to know about the day-to-day happenings of the society. And when the things are presented critically by the journalist, only then would you be able to give your opinions, only then you would be able to probe into the further truth of things. So, the journalism is nothing but it's a discourse, the discourse of telling truth, the discourse of telling truth to ourselves about ourselves. So, we have basically to understand the concept of journalism, we need to know that journalism is nothing but the act of writing about news related subjects for all medium, be it print or non-print. So you find the information, you establish the facts, you scheme the facts, you edit the facts, and then you will establish the facts to the common public. So that is the sole work of journalism. Now it is also the complicated process of taking information and sifting through it, editing information and giving it context. So, for example, if today there is a scarcity of water in a particular area, a journalist will not go and say that, okay, today the residents of Andheri has not received water. Now that is not news for the journalist, because it probably might be a temporary thing which might get resolved between 1 to 2 hours. But if it is an everyday affair and the people have to suffer for the water supply, they have to queue for the water supply. If the journalist has to report to the people why the water supply has been cut off, or why is there not a seamless supply of water for the residents, so that is what the journalist's work turns out to. So basically, you have to see that the journalist will do the entire process of finding the news, collecting the information, and updating people in a particular context. So in doing so, it's almost like going for a fieldwork research where the journalist will go collect the data, come back, edit it, and then represent it in a suitable context. So the journalist is always involved in the selection and presentation of what he or she considers to be noteworthy and in meeting the standard of truth and honesty in reporting. So if someone tells you that, okay, report it to a journalist that there is no water in my house from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, that is not news because no one would be interested in knowing why 10 o'clock to say 12 o'clock is the time frame where there is no water in your house. Probably it's a one day thing. But for a journalist to make it a news, it should be regular. It should be there. The problem should be persistent and the problem should need immediate addressal. So basically, it is always about selecting the important content, the persistent content, the information which needs to arrest the reader's attention or the viewer's attention, the information which needs immediate and urgent policy making decisions from the government and so on. So, the journalist is always involved in the selection and presentation of what he or she considers to be noteworthy and in meeting the standard of truth and honesty in reporting. Now, journalism incorporates everything from the hard news of politics and public affairs to the softer side, which includes human interest and celebrity stories. So when I talk about hard news, for example, now the elections are going on in certain parts of the country. So who does the job there? You cannot rely on the beat reporters because they are not skilled to be journalists. So what happens there is top media houses will send people, trained journalists, trained personnel to give you a one-on-one account of what is happening in parts of the country. So if an election is happening, say it's in a remote area, the work of the journalist would be to find out if the election is conducted smoothly, if people are coming and placing their votes. They have to see and report to the larger part of the country whether the EVM machines are tampered. They have to let the people know about the wrongdoings and the good doings. Basically, they have to act as the watchdog. Now, it incorporates news on politics. It incorporates news on public affairs. For example, now Mumbai is going to launch 8 swimming pools which will be available to the public within a time period of 30 months from now. So this is of public interest. So it is the work of the journalist to inform to the public, to find the truth, to see. It's not a proclamation that 8 swimming pools would simply be built in and around Mumbai. It's a public proclamation that crores of rupees has been released for the project. So once the journalist gets the details, the funding is done and so on, would it release that news? So not only after looking into the hard news of politics, acting as a watchdog of the government, the journalist also deals with public affairs. Then it also leads to the softer side, which includes human interest. Now when we talk about human interest, we see that journalism today acts as a platform where it is responsible for getting news worldwide to garner a curiosity among people and to promote a developed state. So today if in certain parts of the country artificial intelligence is booming, it is the duty of the journalist to give that information to the other parts of the country or the world so that people know the advances. For example, if Elon Musk has today sent his car to the moon or the Mars, it is the duty of the journalist to report and do so because these are things of human interest. Sitting here at one corner of your college, you wouldn't be aware of the advances which is taking place in and around the globe. So, it is the duty of the journalist to bring stories that touch human interest. You also have pages like Humans of Bombay, Humans of New York. So, apart from the hardcore process of distributing news, the journalist also does stories of human beings, how they have sustained themselves in difficult surroundings, what they are doing to impart a good living, and so on. Then, of course, journalists are the only ones through which you get access to your celebrity stories. So if Gigi Hadid or Kim Kardashian is doing something in another part of the globe, you will be knowing it only through the presence of journalists who are passing you all the factual information. For example, sitting here in India today, you are able to see the direct as well as a repeat telecast of the Oscars which took place today. So sitting here in India, you have access to that information, you have access to that entire Oscar ceremony only because of the work of a few successful journalists. So apart from that, journalism today also delivers lifestyle messages. Times of India, popular Bennett and Coleman production, has this page called the Speaking Tree. Then medical updates, you will always find with change of temperature, you'll have seasonal updates. So if it's summer, it's winter, it's spring, you know how to take care of your body. You have updates where you can question a doctor which has been hired by the newspaper agency, and doctor will address to your questions and so on. Then you get updates about the weather. Sitting here in India, Mumbai, you might be well aware of the fact that it is warm, but the rest of the country is rolling under snow. So what is happening in Canada? What is happening in the United States? What is happening in Wyoming? And all sitting here, you can know. Then science, education, and much more. So there are many segments which are journalism industry will cater to. Now all of these segments comes to you packaged in a way that it is easy for you to consume. So you have today various apps like that of Economic Times, the Hindu and all, which are keeping you abreast with the information from time to time. So basically, journalism is nothing but the act of writing. Writing what? Writing things which are noteworthy. Writing about subjects which is crucial for a human being's existence in that particular century. Writing information which will give people an accountability, which will make the government accountable to the people of their deeds and actions. It acts as a watchdog. So the journalists today are busy taking in information, processing the information, editing the information, and sending it back to you in a manner which is contextually very efficient and effective. So everything from hard news to your weather to your lifestyle, medical news, public politics, human interest, and celebrity stories are all encapsulated within the domains of journalism. Now, let's come to the topic of craft and professionalism. So, technically, when we talk about a craft, Now, craft as defined by the Oxford dictionaries is an activity skill that involves using one's hands. So, if you are adept in, say, making pottery, so that's a craft. Those belongs to your handicrafts. If you're good in embroidery, if you're good in stitching, those are your hand skills, your handcrafts. So this definition would easily again relate to journalism as a craft, because when we practice journalism, we write stories and articles which involve the use of our hands. Now, barring a few exceptional cases where people have made use of their toes to write, we always see that the very essentials of writing, the very essentials of typing, the very essentials of printing are done with our 10 fingers, right? So anything which involves these 10 fingers and which goes on to make a product which is consumable by society, there we have the craft. Now, because journalism entails of using your hands to write your stories and articles, hence for some people, journalism is considered to be a craft. Now, this is illustrated more with the example that when the art of journalism began many years ago in Egypt, they used papyrus paper made out of water and plants to write. So papyrus was nothing but the extract of the plant which was mashed together. The roughage was then stretched, chemically treated, and on that you used to write with your dye or the ink. Now the Chinese later on discovered paper from trees, and they were able to print large amounts of information. Now this is the period before the actual printing press and all started. Now this was a tedious process. Today we have papers which are machine made. We hardly use recycled papers, but in those days using a material to write involves a lot of skills, because it included the craft of paper making. So with your hands you had to recycle the fiber out of the plants and make the papyrus. So again, you had to take the leaves, you had to take the parts of the plants, squash them, mix them, mash them, treat them with the proper chemicals, dry them out in the sun, cut them, trim them, and only then you could write. So in those days probably journalism was better called off as a craft. Now again today it is still not done, because today blogging is a kind of craft journalism that many people take up as a hobby. So we have all kinds of amateur writers who want to do creative writing, and then they end up selling their articles, or they do the content writing and they then end up writing it and selling. Now once they sell a particular article, for example, for every 10,000 words, they might get a remuneration. So that is a craft. You are producing something, you are minting money out of it, and this is done through the usage of your hands. Now, as Smith, a well-known journalist, argued that journalism is not a profession, but it is a craft. So you have many advocates who insisted that journalism is a craft. So he stated that it depends more on perception, skill, empathy, and honesty of the journalist practitioner rather than the accusation of technical knowledge and skills. So, according to Smith, the very journalistic act implied that the journalist should learn how to give a level of insight, a level of skill, a level of perception and empathy and honesty while dealing with the news. So you needed your empathy to understand the ongoing surroundings. You needed the skill to make the paper, to process the paper, write a paper, and you needed to be skillful to be able to use that dye into a desirable font so that it could be read by people. There was a great deal of honesty because you were skillfully trying your level best to present the unknown to the people, and the practitioner required more than technical skills and knowledge. So this means that one could do journalism as a craft if they had journalistic qualities rather than the skills one learns at educational facilities. So today, when you are doing a course on mass communication, my job is to train you about the various pedagogies of mass communication. What are the models, the methods, the techniques which you use? But according to this argument, Smith specifically says that right after you learn to produce the facts and information, right after you are skilled enough to present it in a creative manner, you do not need any educational qualification or degree. Now this method has its disadvantage because without proper training, you do have a bunch of bad journalists. So what is happening is, if it is considered a craft, you end up with the danger of having journalists who are not sensitive, who do not know how to present the questions, who do not know how to find the answers to those questions, who does not know how to empathize, who does not know how to tactfully and skillfully deal with the situations that arise. Now, we have another set of people who argues that journalism is a profession. Now, when we talk about journalism to be a profession, then the journalism, according to people who go on by that argument, believes that profession is a type of job that needs special training or skills, especially one needs a high level of education. Now, when we take the process of journalism, it is a simple process by which we pass on news. Now, I take my phone and I call someone and I pass on a message that, okay, I'm taking a class now. Even that's a news. But is that news enough? No, because it is not worthy enough to be called a news. So what is happening here? You are requiring training. The mere fact that you're trying to distinguish what is worthy to be a news or what is not worthy to be a news also makes us think that you do need a fine amount of training. You do need a fine amount of special skills, a higher level of education. Why do you have your journalism or your mass communication in your degree level and not your high school level? If it is the case here, then if journalism is a craft, right after your high school you can be a journalist. But why is it not allowed? Because journalism as a subject needs a high degree, a high intensity of training. Now, that training process does not involve using a paper or trying to find out how to use a paper out of recycled materials. But here you need an edge. You need to have, apart from the qualities of empathy, you need professionalism. Now, how do you learn that? You learn that through your specialized training that you receive in your degree and your postgraduate levels. So you learn how to use the different tools of journalism. You learn about digital media, you learn how to use those equipments for a faster dissemination of news. You learn through the process of editing, through the process of selective skimming of news, what is considered to be important. You learn to place the information in a logical manner. You learn to place it in a manner which can engross readers. You also know how to keep your viewers engrossed. Moreover, you will be adept with the different techniques that goes into a faster and more lucid dissemination of news. Now, if you just done your high school level, you might be trained with just the basic methods of writing. But what you learn in your high school level is just the basic hours of writing. Now, a skilled journalist needs to have a skilled content writing skills, because journalistic skills are different from academic writing. Now, if you were a researcher, then your writing skills would have followed certain formats. Now, likewise, if you are a journalist, you need to write your script, you need to write your news bite. So everything, you need to write your reports. Now, everything will have a format, and for that you need specialized training. Now, once you have that specialized training, you earn a reputation. So basically what you're doing, you are engaging yourself into a profession. Now, the profession is nothing but the type of job. So journalism here now turns out to be a job where you're needing special types of training or skills, and you are imparting a higher level of education. Now, with that being said, we proceed why journalism should be considered as a profession. Now, if it were just a craft, then there would be no need to teach journalism at a higher education or tertiary level. The very fact that I am imparting you with a degree of mass communication implies the need of highly skilled training. Now, journalism is also a profession just by the mere fact that you are earning an income or salary from your work. Now, people who endorse journalism to be a craft would also say that when we employ our skills, when we make our handicrafts, we earn money. Now, unlike crafting, which depends on how many items you produce or make, journalism also involves something more tangible than the writing material. It compasses your values, your ethics, and so on. So, when you present a news, not only you need to be tactful and diplomatic without hurting the various sentiments of the religious societies or people and their beliefs and customs, dictums and totems, but you also need to be aware of the fact that only if you have invested an ample part of your time picking up the skills of journalism would you be able to take it as a profession. Now, barely learning the art of reading and writing would not make you a journalist. Today, even I know how to read and write. Probably I might not be a journalist. Probably I might be a researcher or a teacher or a scholar, and so on and forth. So, to be a journalist, you need to have that higher and specialized writing skills, where you learn to deal with the various segments which are today disseminated and propagated by the various schools of journalism. Now, so we come to the verdict whether journalism is a craft or a profession. So, in this, we conclude that journalism is basically a profession which starts as a craft. So, no doubt journalism involves writing, no doubt journalism involves your hands, but it is at the end of the day a profession where you are taking skills to advance the craft of just mere reading and writing. It becomes specialized. You learn how to prioritize the need. You learn to collect the information, send the information, edit it, skim it, arrange it in a logical manner, and so on. Then, as one gains more experience and dedicates their life to the art of journalism, it can definitely be called as a profession. So, in journalism, as you gain more and more insight, as you have more and more experience, what you do, you earn your money from it. You dedicate a crucial period of your life towards it. So it becomes a profession because you spend a crucial time learning the intricacies of journalism. You get specially trained on those journalism schools, and then you dedicate that learning experience to the larger benefit of the society, and over the prolonged period of years that becomes your profession. Now, journalism is what makes the society what it is today, with the compiling, collecting, and reporting of newsworthy information. So, when you are in a school of journalism, you will learn the different editing techniques, the different writing techniques, the different ways in which bylines are written, the different ways in which a product is advertised, the different ways in which you capture and divulge the details of someone's intimate life, the way how paparazzis would function, and so on. So basically, at the end of the day, as a journalist, you are finding the truth. You are compiling the truth in a logical manner so that it is easily understandable and appreciable by all. You find ways and means to keep your media engrossed. You learn how to earn revenue out of it by engaging in advertisements. You make jingles, you make touching melodies which remains in people's hearts. So by collecting, by reporting all the material or facts which you find worthy to be reported, you end up making it as one strong profession. Now, we come to tabloid. Now, what is a tabloid? Now, tabloid, if I tell you the word tabloid, what does that imply? Now, tabloid implies the tablet which you have. Now, anything which is compressed and condensed would be termed as a tablet. Now, tabloid journalism is a type of popular, largely sensationalistic journalism that takes its name from the format of a small newspaper, roughly half the size of an ordinary broadsheet. So when you have the ordinary newspaper, the regular newspaper, it is also termed as the broadsheet. Now you have seen how the ordinary broadsheet, say your regular paper, the Times of India or the Hindu or the Indian Express or the Asian Age, you've seen how it looks like. Now you've seen the smaller version, that is that of the Mint or the Mumbai Mirror. Now these are popular tabloids, the Star, the Daily Mail, and so on. So the normal tabloid is way smaller than the original broadsheet in size, and it being smaller, it also does the demarcation from the larger broadsheet and the smaller tabloid in terms of content. Now, while the content of a broadsheet is more serious, focused, and prioritized in nature, that of a tabloid will, however, be sensationalized. It would be more into news where trivia is seen. So something which is eye-popping, something which is not of national importance, but something you simply cannot do without. It is like gossip presented to you in a written form. It excites you. It keeps you looking into it. And all of us enjoy being the closeted reader or viewer. So now, say if you want to know the details of, say, Shah Rukh Khan and his new movie. So the tabloid will present you things which are usually not present. For example, if we take the case of, say, Taimur Ali Khan. Now he is a sensation in Mumbai Mirror. Every other day you find a picture of Taimur Ali Khan more than his parents, Karina or Saif. Now, what is this? This is sensational. And the readers too become the closeted readers because somewhere everyone wants to know what the kid is up to. But you cannot even say that you enjoy reading this news. So you end up saying that, oh, Times of India is a toilet paper because it's publishing news on Taimur Ali Khan, which is of no national importance. We do not need to know where the baby is having play dates, which party is he attending, which play school is he going to, and so on. But you also do enjoy the fact that if you get a picture on how Taimur is celebrating his birthday, probably it piques you a certain amount of uh, unprecedented leisurely joy, which you might then again brush off as, okay, come on, it's not necessary, I don't need to know it. Now, the origin of the term tabloid is very disputed. Now, according to the most plausible explanation, the name derives from tablet, the product of compressed pharmaceuticals. Now, say today I'm feeling very unwell, I take a tablet. Now, when I say I have taken a tablet, it implies that I have taken a compressed composition of drugs in order to relieve myself from the pain. So if I'm taking a Wovren D, so it is a Wovren tablet where the main composition is diclofenac. Now diclofenac is a drug which is known to take off your pain. Now that drug is compressed. So this compression of the tablet is also literally employed into the plausible explanation of the tabloid being named after the tablet. So tabloid is basically a combination of a tablet and an alkaloid. Tab for the tablet and loid from the alkaloid. And it was a trademark for tablets introduced by Burroughs, Wellcome and Company in 1884. Now, within a couple of years, the connotation or the quality of being compressed was transferred to other entities and activities, including a new style of reporting that condensed stories into a simplified and concentrated style. So, the connotation or the idea of compressing it and condensing it came from the tablet, and it began to be used in different entities and activities, including a style of reporting that condensed stories in a simple manner. It used to be small, but it used to be concentrated. For example, the tabloids you have seen recently have been flashing news about Sridevi's death. Now, a normal news coverage would just say that Sridevi has died and so on, the time of death and so on. But your tabloids are daily doing the work of intricate details of what Sridevi was doing before her death, what were her last moments, how did she die, what was she there in doing there in Dubai? When are the authorities releasing her body? What are the speculations about her death, the different death theories which are being floated? Mind you, these are not coming in regular papers. These are coming in tabloids. The regular paper is informing you that Sridevi has died. Her body will be brought back from Dubai and will be cremated with state honors because she's a Padma Shri. That's it. But all these additional juicy tidbits, and yesterday we even found that her ashes were being um, released into the Rameshwaram post. Now what's happening? We are all reading it, right? And we cannot like it, but we cannot say that we don't like it. So these are things which tabloid specializes in. It gives you sensationalized, it gives you special news which is filled with trivia, which is juicy. You want to read it, you hate it, but you cannot ignore it. So in 1900, Joseph Pulitzer, publisher of the New York World, invited Alfred Harmsworth, founder of the Daily Mail in London, to edit the World for one day. So Pulitzer invited Harmsworth. Now, Alfred Harmsworth himself was the founder of the Daily Mail, and Pulitzer had the World. So, Pulitzer invited Harmsworth to edit the World for one day. Harmsworth's imaginative version of the World, which came out on January 1st, 1901, was half the size of the customary paper format and was heralded as the newspaper for the 20th century. So, the imaginative version of the World, which came out on January 1901, was not a regular broadsheet. It was half the size of the regular broadsheet, and it was heralded as the newspaper of the 20th century, where everything was fast, condensed, everything was learning to be short, crisp, and simple. Now, Harmsworth's conception of the tabloid, however, referred not to the reduced size of the newspaper, but to the economical use of printing space, which he filled with short stories, short paragraphs, and simple sentences. Now, if we take a normal newspaper, the normal newspaper will have larger headings. Even now, if you see the Times of India, the regular broadsheet, you'll see pages. Some people put a huge full pages of advertisements for obituary, for promotion, and so on. No doubt it garners a huge amount of revenue, but in those days that is not the case. So, in order to economize the space, in order to economize the cost of publication and production, Harmsworth used the paper not in the size of the regular broadsheet, but he used it in a smaller manner. Now, his concept of doing so was to condense and fill as many information as possible without using too much of space. So he kept all the news, edited all the news in a simple manner, put on the crucial information, did away with the excess, and everything was short, simple, and it was filled or loaded and packed with information. Now, in 1903, Harmsworth started the first modern tabloid newspaper, the Daily Mirror in London. Now, appealing to the mass market, it presented crime stories, human tragedies, celebrity gossip, sports, comics, and puzzles. Now, in a condensed sheet, which is not the usual size of a broadsheet, you cannot put formal newses. So you have to put sensational, trivial, informal news. Now all of these became the part of your tabloid. So in that tabloid, now Harmsworth filled it with crime stories, he filled it with human tragedies, celebrity stories has always been part of tabloids. It fills it with sports, so it's of people's interest and it is sent in a condensed manner. It does not require large news for printing, but everything is condensed and given. Then you have your own comics and puzzles. So the Mirror offered more photographs than other newspapers and presented its stories in a reduced and easy to read manner. When we were small, we had this tendency of taking the newspaper. I specifically did that because uh, for me, I didn't like reading the whole newspaper. That was way back when I was in class, say, 3 or 4. So I used to open the newspaper and directly go on to the leisure section where in the normal broadsheet you would have certain comic sessions. You would have, apart from your comic strips, you would have your jigsaw puzzle, and then you would have your every 90s kids would relate to that, your TV schedule, which would be shown when. So I still remember I was in school, so there was no chance that I could see those cartoons, but it used to give me a sense of utmost joy in seeing the schedule that Tom and Jerry would be shown at this many hours, and probably I would get to see the other cartoons later on. So even at school I used to think, okay, it's 12 o'clock, now Tom and Jerry will be shown. And eagerly I used to wait for Saturdays when I used to come back from school, and at 12 o'clock I used to watch Heidi. Now, what is it? It is nothing but it is catering, the newspaper, the broadsheet itself is catering to a small section of people who are not that educated. A class 3 or class 4 child wouldn't be educated to that level to understand the importance of prioritized and formal news. So imagine the popularity if that news is given in a condensed manner where the size is smaller than broadsheet, but it's catering to more and more viewership for people who are not interested in the more important news. So basically, for frivolous people like me, I used to enjoy reading the tabloid paper more than the regular paper, and I think this habit stays on with us for most of the times. Today, as an educated professional, I might shrug off with almost arrogant intellectual audacity that okay, I do not read Mumbai Mirror, but if I get an option of a Times of India with a Mumbai Mirror, my first eyes would go into the Mumbai Mirror. Why? Because it's giving me news which is irrelevant, but it's giving me fun. It's a leisurely read. So that is the major function of the tabloid being more popular than the regular broadsheet or the serious news which are presented. Now, the tabloid uses a specific type of journalism, which is a discounted type of journalism, and it is considered not to be a true form of journalism because it is not publishing news the way it ought to, right? So here in tabloid journalism, what is happening is the specific type of news is being published in a more sensational manner. So the tabloid is your newspaper and it is practicing yellow journalism. By yellow journalism, what do we mean? Now, often not taken seriously by established reporters, tabloid journalism may be seen to only focus on topics such as stories which are more sensational. For example, it includes celebrity gossip, outrageous crime, prophecy, predictions, extraterrestrials, end of world scenarios, and etc. So, it is not reporting things which ought to be reported. In tabloid, you are quenching the leisurely thirst of the reader. So that form of journalism is called yellow journalism. It is not a serious type of journalism, yet it is a creative type of journalism filled with trivial matters of no use, filled with sensational matters, which is, I would say, bad manners at times. You do not need to intrude into a celebrity's life, but who doesn't love celebrity gossips? And if people say that no, I don't enjoy celebrity gossip, I'm sure you're lying, because somewhere you do enjoy that. So in a tabloid, then again, you have pages where you'll have your horoscopes, your predictions. Now, I personally would love to flaunt and say that I do not read horoscopes and all, but somewhere, if I get a tablet, I wouldn't mind looking into my horoscope or star sign, what it says for the day. Then tabloids are filled with news which are end of the world scenarios, sightings of UFOs, and all things which are spicy and baseless. Now, one of the main characteristics of this newspaper is that unlike daily newspapers, which reports current events in a more professional or factual manner, the tabloid style is to emphasize the sensational elements of the story. Now, for example, a more reputable newspaper may report on the death of a particular celebrity, noting the passing and possibly providing a brief history of his or her life. So, if today Sridevi has passed away, people probably the normal newspaper would report the time of death and the brief history of life, her major contributions, how she was cremated, that's it. A tabloid will, however, concentrate on anything which may be possibly scandalous surrounding the person's life. The Mumbai Mirror is now splashed with stories of Sridevi and her illicit child, and stories of her illicit relationship between Boni Kapoor, and how Boni Kapoor divorced his first wife, and how his children from his first wife, who has also passed away, is now standing strong with the devastated family. Now, where am I getting all this news? Thanks to my reading of the various scandalous tabloids. Now, this could take the form of something as ridiculous as a pet dog or a shoe fetish, or any of which may or may not be true. But nonetheless, this is what a tabloid would focus on. So, for example, it might tell you that Sridevi engaged in eating out cakes with Shilpa Shetty on a binge day, which she would, normally would have done, and so on. So this juicy tidbits, the scandalous tidbits, it might be true, it might not be true, but it is garnering human interest. So this is what a tabloid journalism does to you. Now, yellow journalism is the use of lucid features and sensationalized news in newspaper publishing to attract readers and increase the circulation. Now, it uses these lucid features of this very intimate and personal details which are probably of no use whatsoever in a broadsheet. Now, that is sensationalized and brought to publication. Now, what is doing? It is increasing the readership. It is increasing the circulation because people want to know about the juicy tidbits. Now, the phrase was coined in 1890s to describe the tactics employed in furious competition between two New York City newspapers, The World and The Journal. So what happened was, a particular artist had created the yellow kit. Now that yellow kit was very graphic, and it went on to increase circulation because people were liking that feature. Now, the rival newspaper hired the artist who made the yellow kit and post that even their circulation increase, giving rise to a competition. Now this has got nothing to do with the yellow color which is used, but this has got to do with the fact that this journalism is nothing but that of the Yellow Kid comic strip which was created. So that is the yellow journalism for you. Now the peak of yellow journalism in terms of both intensity and influence came in early 1898 when a US battleship, the Maine, sunk in Havana Harbor. So this was during the American and the Spanish Civil War time, right? Now, the dramatic style of yellow journalism contributed to creating public support for the Spanish-American War, a war that would ultimately expand the global reach of the United States. So, even when we take the case of Vietnam War, the very fact that the Americans were understanding that it was pointless sending more and more soldiers to a war which would never be won, because it was a lost cause, was also due to yellow journalism, because it was providing tidbits, information which were not covered in your regular and serious broadsheets. Now we come to the concept of news. Now what is news? Now news is the information that is published in newspapers and broadcast on radio and television about recent events in the country or world in a particular area or activity. So news is nothing but the information that is published, the information that is broadcast, and the information is all about basically the recent events. So the news of Sridevi's death was probably news during the time period from 24th of Feb towards 28th of February, but now this is not news because it's old and it's already been published, it's already been under circulation. People have consumed the news, critiqued the news, and so on. So it needs to be recent in character. Now news is the information, it consists of facts that is published. Obviously news is in a printed form. Even if you are reading the news, you need to have your script ready before you go and blabber it out to public, and it is broadcasted on the television as well as the radio, and it is usually of recent events in a country or world in particular area of activity. So journalists each day structure the information received so that the public receives it sorted out and neatly packaged into stories the same day on radio, television, or online, and the next day in newspapers. Now, when we talk about the process of journalism, we are very well aware of the fact of how a news is published. So when it comes to the production of news, we know that the news, in order to be presented to public, the truth has to be found out, the truth has to be logically arranged, the truth has to be recent in nature, and it should be packaged in ways. So the writing style of television news would be different from the writing style of a radio news, and so on, or the writing style of what is going to be published in your newspaper would be very different from what is being written as a script. So when I'm reading that this is the All India Radio and the news read by so and so, that is very different from the news that is published. So in the printed Times of India, you do not say that this is All Indian Radio and the news is read by. You don't do that. You just have your news in a specified capsule And on top of it, you write by either your name if you are a very senior journalist, or you just write by staff reporter. So there are ways in which it is processed, and that processing is done in the form of stories. It's neatly packaged and sorted, and then it is transmitted to you immediately if it is a radio or a television, and if it is a newspaper, the news of the entire day is collected and wait post midnight hours when the broadsheet is put to bed, that is, it's put for publication, only then would you receive the news early morning. Now, a news before being published or broadcast will be first evaluated. So, certain newses will not be released the same day. Why? Because it has to undergo a certain amount of evaluation. Now, that evaluation is essential because you need to see if the news is logically presented, if the news is not creating any conflict, if the news is true or if the news is false, and so on. So basically, in a newspaper, the biggest news will be given the first in the bulletin or on page 1 of the paper in detail. Lesser news will be given in less detail later in the bulletin or on an inside page, and the rubbish will have been thrown away. So the necessary news, the important news today, if the Prime Minister or the President of the country has done something or is in news or has created a furor somewhere or things that need to be known by the democracy, they will occupy the front page and they will be done in detail. So usually the big front page news you will again see in page 3 or see in page 12. So the news is continued along with news of lesser detail, and the news which has been found to be invalid, incomplete, which does not hold any truth, which is a false rumor, will simply be discarded away. Now, what are the criteria of selecting a news? Now, when you select a news, you have to see if the news is new, if it is unusual, if it is interesting or significant, or is it about people. So these elements make up what we call the news value of the information. The stronger the elements, the higher the news value. So when a particular fact comes to you, firstly you have to see whether it is new. Then you have to see whether it's unusual. If it is unusual, it will cater to the interest. Then you have to see whether the news is significant or not, and if it is about people or of people's interest or not. Now the elements make up what we call the news value. These are the factors which will contribute to your news value. The stronger the elements, the higher is your news value. Now we'll go into all of these elements in detail. Now, is it new? What is new? Is my dress new? No. Is it news enough to be told? No. So what is new? If it is not new, it cannot be news. For a news to be news, it should have the feature of being immediate or recent in nature. For example, the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi is unusual, interesting, significant, and about people, but it cannot be possibly reported in tomorrow's papers because it's not new. Now, we know Mahatma Gandhi is considered to be the father of the nation, and though there are different views of why he should be called the father of the nation or why he should be disregarded as the father of the nation, we do have important archives, the national archives, which have news on the death of Mahatma Gandhi, or how Nathuram Godse had planned the entire assassination and so on. And we do have news on how it was reported that what were the final words. Now again, now you have contradictory news where they say that Gandhi's last words were not "Hey Ram" and so on. So this is not something which people are not aware of. It's not new. It is a very old news probably which has been passed on from generations since Gandhi's assassination. Now it is significant given the stature of the person being concerned, being spoken of. It is interesting if it is leading to insights on how Gandhi was assassinated. But it cannot be put into news because it's been already published and it is not new. Now, you do have certain features in certain newspapers where they pick up a year and they say today 15 years back, 10 years back, but still that's of not any interest to the public because the public needs to know about the day-to-day affairs. Now, if some facts about that assassination became known for the first time, that would be news. The assassination would not be news, but the information would be. Like I said, one of the secretaries of Mahatma Gandhi had recently, it's not even a year old news, probably a few month old news, that he has said that he was very near actually to Mahatma Gandhi when the assassination took place, and he says that he at least did not hear Mahatma Gandhi uttering the word "Hey Ram." Now, this again came back into the newspapers in 2017. Why? Because even though the assassination is an old news, however, the information is sensational. It's new. So to spark interest in people, this has been published. Now, events which happened days or even weeks earlier can be still news as long as they have not been reported before. So, suppose you find out how Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was killed. Now you are very sure of your hypothesis. You are very sure of the body which you have found, and you say that no, it's Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's body and not the body or the ashes which has been preserved in Tokyo as his ashes. So now this can be news because it is new, it is not reported, it's been just found out. It is like eureka moment where you have now found the news. So if you are telling the story for the first time, it is news to your readers or listeners, and therefore it can be news. Now we have many contrasting notions on the death of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, even though a film has been made on the same, yet the actual cause of death is not ascertained, because even though the parts which has been preserved in Tokyo is still not valid, because recently we read the news that the DNA testing is still not allowed. So we don't know. We again came up with people who lived, who have similarities like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So even he was considered to be a fugitive who had the hidden identity of Bose, and so on. Again, see, the news of the release of Sridevi's dead body, for instance, was not released to the world by the Dubai government for several hours. When they did release it, however, it still was very definitely news. So Sridevi had passed probably on the 24th of February, and till the 28th of February, 4 days almost, her body was not released. So you had media reporting from time to time So Saturday when she passed away, people thought that probably Sunday they would get her body. Monday didn't happen, Tuesday didn't happen, Wednesday was a funeral. So all of these is news because it's new. People are awaiting for the additions which are coming to your story. So newness or novelty is a very important factor for news. A news has to be new. A news has to have the element of recentness in order to be called a news. Then, is it unusual? Now, things are happening all the time, but not all of them are news, even when they are new. Now, recent happenings are always there, but not all of them can be news. So, for example, a man wakes up, eats breakfast, goes to work on a bus. It has only just happened, but nobody wants to read it because it's not unusual. Now, ordinary and everyday things do not make news. So, how I start my day is immaterial. So today if I have set the alarm early so that I can watch a particular movie or say the Oscars or something, it's not news because it is immaterial. Its significance is very low. But the ordinary everyday things, if there is an element of unusualness, then of course it makes it to the news. So if that same man was 90 years old and is still catching the bus to work every day, it would be unusual because you generally retire by the age of 60 to 65, a maximum of 70 years. So recently there was this marathon which was going on, and you had this coverage of Milind Soman and Ankita Kaur who had done their training of marathon. Now it's a known fact that Milind Soman, Ankita Kaur runs marathon. They run 11 to 12 kilometers in an hour barefoot and so on. So you're done with that news. But yesterday there was another thing that added to it, was a 90 plus year old woman who has also run the marathon at a shorter distance. Now that is news. Why? Because it is unusual. So that quirky element should be there in your information to be labeled as news. The classic definition of news is this: dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog is absolutely new, because you see that if a dog bites you, probably you need to take rabies injections and take care of yourself. But if you go and bite a dog today, it is definitely news. This definition is not a universal definition. If dogs are eaten in your society at feast, for instance, then it will not be news when a man bites a dog, so long as it has been cooked. For example, I come from the northeastern part of India. Now over there in Nagaland, people eat dog meat. Of course, in Assam we don't, but in Nagaland it is. So we cannot judge by the fact that a man has eaten dog meat. Probably in that part of the northeastern state, it's a culture. So what is usual in one society may be unusual to the other. Again, we expect the content of the news to vary from society to society. In every society though, whatever is unusual is likely to be news. Now, is it interesting? So, events which are new and unusual may still not be of general interest. So, scientists may report that an insect has just been found living on a plant which it did not previously inhabit. So, events which are new and unusual may still not be of general interest. Now, any scientist who may find an insect that has just been found living on a planet which it did not previously inhabit probably is interesting to the scientists, but not for all people. The discovery is new, the event is unusual, but it is unlikely to interest anybody other than the specialist or the enthusiast. So Finding a new species of, say, bee. I'm very annoyed with bees because it stings and it hurts. So it is not news for me if you find a new species of bee. But for an apiarian, a person who works in the apiary, who will collect honey, that finding of a new species is very good. It's an enthusiastic news for them. In a specialist publication, this could be big news, but in general news broadcast or paper, it would merit at most a few words, maybe 50 words max, that a new bee has been found and that bee has been named by so and it's a rare species and its origin is somewhere, and that's it. But it will be published in detail. Probably a research paper will be published out of it in specialized context. Then we have to find out whether a news is significant or not. Now, a peasant farmer says that Roman Catholic Church should ordain women priests. Now, that is not news. Now, a peasant farmer might just go and say that a woman should be ordained as a priest. It's not news because something is unusual, it's not significant. Who listens to a farmer when you have an archbishop sitting over you? Now, if the archbishop says it's news because what he says on the subject is significant. So, if the archbishop is now telling you that, okay, women has to be ordained as priests. All this while you were aware of the concept that most of the parsons were men. Now, if you have a lady parson, then it is news. Now, it is the views of people such as Archbishop which will help in the policy of the church. So, Archbishop being one of the heads of the church, if he says that women need to be ordained into priesthood, that is phenomenal and that would be of importance than a mere peasant saying so. So once again, what is interesting or significant in one society may not be interesting or significant in another. Now the content of the news may be different, therefore in different societies, but the way it is defined will be same. So different societies have different ways of understanding the news. The significance in one society may differ in another society. Now, if the same peasant was a leader of a peasant revolution and he passes on something, probably at that point where he is given priority, his words will be considered significant and that would be published as news. Now, is it about people? Now, this is also an interesting notion whether the news which you are going to publish is about people or not. Now, most news is automatically about people because it is the things that people do to change the world which makes news. So, today, if you find Elon Musk sending a car to the space, it is because they are doing things which are changing the world. Now that is news. However, news can also be made by non-human sources such as a cyclone. So when cyclone infect a area, then the damage is so much. Recently, when there was a cyclone in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, you could see how an entire riverbed was taken off and the entire ocean bed was empty, and people started taking off corals and other valuables or whatever the sea could offer to them, whatever the riverbed could offer to them, whatever the ocean bed could offer to them temporarily. Now again, the intensity of the wind was, cyclone was so much, the hurricane was so much that it again filled up with water. Then a bushfire In California, bushfires are very uh, prominent occurrences because if a tiny spark gets lit, it can put a whole forest area, specifically during the autumn period, into a major loss because of the quality that a tiny spark is capable enough to cause a huge forest fire. Then droughts in Rajasthan are always brought by media because even though it is there, when it comes, it comes and it produces massive ill effects. So that is there. Then volcanic eruption. We do see people or scientists who collect pails of volcanic lava, cools it and tests it to the laboratory for testing. But if there's a sudden eruption and if there's cause of death in the human society, if it has rampant destructions to human settlements, then they make it to the news. Or the earthquake, when Gujarat earthquake happened, the Richter scale became very popular, and then uh, there were stringent information drive which were passed on to people. So with Gujarat earthquake, people became more and more conscious. Stringent laws were passed, and specifically in northeastern regions of India, where the tectonic movements or the tectonic plates are located and the tectonic movements are strong. You usually don't get permission to build up houses beyond 5 to 7 stories, even though a 65-story house has been proposed by the government, but they don't give permission to the general public to build houses more than 6 to 7 stories. So all of these becomes integral part of your human development day-to-day affairs, and it is when reporting these stories, it is important to make sure that the story is centered on people. So when Gujarat earthquake happened, you had people-centric stories where people learned to survive under those debris, drinking their own urine. Or there was this instances when the communal riots occurred, people adopted, there was an intercultural, intercaste adoption. So Hindu boy, recently there was this news that a Hindu boy who was adopted by a Muslim family during the uh, Gujarat earthquake. Now he has got married with a Hindu girl. So even though he was an Islamic boy, Hindu boy, he was raised in an Islamic household post the Gujarat earthquake, and now he's leading a stabilized life. So news which are centered on people, which arouses human sentiments, will also be taken into consideration even if they are caused by non-human sources. Now, the cyclone would not matter, for example, if it blew itself out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, away from any inhabited islands. The fire could burn for as long as it likes in the bush where nobody lives. The Sahara Desert has a near permanent drought, but it is a place where nobody is there or who is reliant on the rains, or a volcanic eruption or an earthquake which damages nobody's property and injures nobody is really not news. So I grew up in Assam, and when we were small, uh, I, I have seen that this is not a regular feature in the western part of the country. When I was in school, usually early mornings was the time when earthquakes would occur, and it was a regular basis. So even when I did my college life there as well, parts of it, earthquake was a form of enjoyment for a child in me because the bed was shaking. I was getting a natural cradle. So those things might seem very immaterial to persons who come to western part of India, or when I was doing my higher studies in the southern part of India. Earthquake implied that people would start praying, crying, providing prayers to the Lord, and taking all the necessary precautions. I remember that day in college we had a safety drill on how to escape a earthquake, how to carry a emergency evacuation drill had an earthquake occurred. But for me, who has been literally cradled on a zone where earthquakes are very active, for me, it was a very funny moment because an earthquake was something where we as kids would love to be jolted on the bed, or we would play hide and seek beneath the bed. So it was natural, a natural part of my childhood. But to be trained into an artificial atmosphere where the news was constantly being blared about the precautionary measures one could take during the earthquake, not only did do the important task of educating the masses who are not aware of the complexities of that situation, but it also made a person like me who is aware of what happens during an earthquake, it also made me aware of the fact that I cannot take it lightly. If there's an earthquake, I should adhere to the precautions which are being taught. Now, how is that possible? It is possible because of the news which played a detrimental role in dissemination of safety drills during times of calamities. Now, all these natural disasters only becomes news when they affect people's lives. Every story can be told in terms of people. Now, the very fact that I enjoyed earthquake, but while I was in college in the southern part of India, uh, the very fact that I was becoming more aware of the dangers of earthquake was because of the news, because it became news more so after the Gujarat earthquake took place. So every story can be told in terms of people. Always start by asking yourself the question, how does it affect my readers? How does it affect my listeners? Or how does it affect my viewers' life? Then, whenever you have a story which tells you how something has happened which affects both people and property, always put people at first. So, the very gist of this is that people matter. For a good news to be published, for the information to have importance, it should always take into account the human life. Now, we come to the concept of journalism and public relations. Now, we often find many PR agencies now. You also have diplomas in public relations and advertising. Now, journalism is printing what someone else does not want to be printed. Everything else is public relations. For example, you are a top-notch politician and you have consumed crores and crores of the taxpayers' hard-earned money. Now, for a journalist, if he comes to know that you are a tainted person, they will present facts as it is. For example, now we know the former finance minister P. Chidambaram's son, Kartik Chidambaram, is now in jail because apparently he has accepted a huge amount of bribe by the then heiress of INX Media, Indrani Mukherjee. Now she's already convicted for murder, but apparently in order to regularize the financial anomalies, she had hired Karti Chidambaram's services. Now, for a journalist, he is just reporting things as it is. Now, what is the PR person doing? The PR person will be the public relation person. So, the public relation for Karti Chidambaram is doing the best when it comes to advocacy. So they are giving out press messages that it's the work of BJP, and This is just being done as a case of vendetta and revenge and so on. So journalism is basically gathering information and reporting to the news to the audience. So it basically informs the public of the events and issues happening around the world. The traditional role of a journalist is that of a watchdog, someone who alerts and updates the public on the issues and problems which is earlier unknown. So, the aim of the journalist is to find the truth and report the news. Now, public relations is the practice of managing information between the journalist and the public. Now, the traditional journalist will only serve as the watchdog. Now, watchdog is nothing but someone who is alerting the people, the government, and they are issuing day-to-day public updates so that people are kept abreast. So, aim of the journalist is nothing but to find the truth and to report the news. But that is not the case in terms of public relations. Now, public relations is the practice of managing information between the journalist and the public. So, if Karti Chidambaram has been into CBI custody, it is up to the journalist to just simply publish whatever it has gone through. So whatever knowledge it is getting, the journalist, the media is simply publishing it. But it's the work of the PR or the public relation expert to handle the relationship. So it turns to be a barrier or a carrier in terms of giving the news to the journalist and retaining what is to be given and what not to be given. So public relation is the practice of managing the information between the journalist and the public. Now the aim of public relation is to persuade the audience with a certain viewpoint of an institution, individual, a product or an idea or service. Now the PR practitioners, what they do is they tend to create a mediator kind of thing between the public and what news is going to be published by the journalist. So they try to present the news information which is going to be published with a particular ideology through the client who has hired them. So individuals and firms use PR practitioners to build, enhance and protect their reputation. So the Congress will have its own PR agents who will say that the BJP is doing that for public vendetta or revenge. But again, the Congress will have their own PR manager who will say that the BJP government has already gone into the Nirav Modi case and it is using Karti Chidambaram in order to distract people from the main news. So all of these are the work of the PR practitioners. They build and they enhance stories. They protect the identity of their clients. They preserve the reputation. The role of a public relation professional is to send press releases to journalists so that it can be converted into an article and can be published. So basically the PR will do with the information of creating a press conference. So a press release will be given. So the necessary information, for example, if you want to know about the views of a family or the family wants to thank the media for something, they will hire the PR practitioners and they will act as spokesperson for the client they are representing. Now what people think PR actually does? The PR does media relations, forms as a mediator between the public and the journalists. What they actually do, they do event planning. They will hold events where the people will gather and the press release will be issued. They form media relations, call up journalists, ask them to be there on time to get the necessary information, internal communication. So they work into the inner fabrics of it. Then crisis communication, if there's a danger or if there is a untoward situation which they are not able to handle it, the PR will handle it. Community relations, the PR will give you the news in such an effective and efficient manner that the relation between the stake of and reputation of the client is maintained, the journalists do not get offended, the public gets the necessary news, so everything is done by the PR professional. Reputation management is the most important thing the PR professionals do. Then of course they have in the easy transmission of news through the digital and the new media. Now we come to alternative journalism or the public journalism or the journalism which is done by the citizen. Now, according to Acton and Hamilton, it is a broad and comparative term that embraces not only journalism of politics and empowerment, but also of popular culture and the everyday happenings. So, it is not possible for a journalist to be present at the correct situation at immediate point of time. So, if an accident has happened downstairs now, it's not possible for the journalist to be there at the very situation. If you see the mythological tales, the journalism is not the Narad Muni who will prakat himself in any context where there is a crisis or a conflict. So, what do you do? In a situation of normal human life, you have people who act as eyewitnesses. So, this citizen journalism, the public journalism or alternative journalism is produced outside. It is outside the mainstream media institutions and networks. It is done by amateurs who have typically little or no training or professional qualification as journalists. So you have this beat reporters, they don't work for any agencies, but these beat reporters are stationed in areas, and if they have to collect an information, they go and do it from the citizens who themselves takes upon the onus of reporting it and giving essential video clippings or factual information about the information that has taken place. So, this is the illustration of an alternate public citizen journalism. So, you have the established media house personnel is saying, excuse me, I am a news reporter. And you have the crazy bunch of over enthusiastic amateur reporters who are saying, hey, so are we? So, for example, if there is an accident which has involved a celebrity. So by the time the trained personnel leads there, you will have one from amongst here who will give today. So it's very easy. They'll directly upload it in Facebook and Twitter. So there is an instant transmission of information which is taking place. So, before the media person or professional can actually reach to the site, you already have the general public who act as amateur reporters. Now, look at this. So, this is a female who has read this newspaper. It is published by a regular it's a regular broadsheet published by a regular media house. Now she's saying, what is this crap? Whoever writes this must check the facts of something, as it is not a paranoid shut-in at all. I'm going to go read a news blog instead. Now, news blog is not a daily feature of a regular media house. A news blog is not daily published in a normal broadsheet. So, a news or a news blog broadcast is happening because people are taking it on themselves. They are not that skilled, but they are taking it on themselves to report about what is happening, right? So, what are the advantages of alternate journalism? Now, the primal advantage is that it leads professional journalists to the site of news. So, whatever be the news, the first reporting is done by the citizens themselves. Now, it also has on the spot footage and pictures of events, pictures that society would have never been able to see if it was not for a citizen who took the pictures. So if there is a crash on the roadside and then both parties start fighting with each other, now whom do you charge guilty? So the passers-by will click photos, will click videos, and from there you can know the truth. So recently there was this instance where media had shown that a car was being towed away while a lady was still inside the car and she was breastfeeding her sick child. Now, that is a gross violation in terms of the training which media has given to the media personnel, or the way media has floated certain ideologies. That nowadays breastfeeding has become a very controversial topic because people want people to be open to the idea. So nowadays you have this hashtag where breastfeeding is breastfeeding. So to tow a car where a woman is breastfeeding her child would show the indignity and would show the mindlessness of the policeman who would do so. So that resulted in the suspension of the police officer as well. But the passers-by, now we have the amateur journalists who had shown that before the incident happened, the husband had wrongly parked the car before towing. The policeman had already said that he will tow the car and he asked the lady to move out. But the lady was adamant. She went inside the car with her baby and she started breastfeeding. Now, whose version will you say is correct? Now, the public has already recorded it, and we soon found in Facebook and Twitter that those messages were also passed. Now, that came into a consensus that both the parties were equally at fault. Now, there is never a small story for citizen journalists. Every bit of news counts. This is a mere incident of a car being towed away, but for citizen journalists, this is not a small story. Every bit of information counts. The speed. The internet allows for uploading of news and information instantaneously. So the speed at which you publish the news is an important aspect. So while the media personnel was giving his own take to the story, faulting the policeman, here are a major public journalist has already published a story that the policeman was not at fault. The people were also to be equally blamed of. And how did that consensus, that balance come with the judgment? Because of the use of the internet, the speed at which digitally the citizen journalists have transmitted the necessary information. Now, what are the disadvantages of alternate public citizen journalism? Now, there is an obvious lack of professionalism. It is called citizen journalism when a story is reported even in a Facebook post or a Twitter post. But professionalism is the key. Communication skills are needed, especially while writing and speaking, skills for comprehension of a good article or reporting of an event. So if you are a journalist, you need to have good communication skills, you need to have good writing skills. So you see that if there is an accident to be reported, say Ashtak has reported a particular scene of distress or an accident scene. So you have the reporter saying, say, this is XYZ reporting from Ashtak with camera person WXNS. So you have that. The communication skill is important, your speaking skills important, and your writing should be impeccable, and you should be absolutely articulate, and your presentation should be crystal clear. But if it is given to a ordinary citizen, that will not come out as it should come out. Then unreliable. We are dealing with humans here, and it is human nature to edit and even to their own likeness. Therefore, it makes the unofficial news unreliable. So humans have a tendency to immediately take sides. Now, once the human takes sides, the purpose of neutrality falters there, and what you get is a biased news. So it's very essential for the news to be collected and reported by the traditional media houses so that it adheres to the recommended parameters by which a good news should be transmitted to the person. Now, what is press? The press is a broad term now. It includes not only your newspapers, the news weeklies, magazines, but it also includes the journalists working in the media, the Orient and the electric. So you have media, internet, television, radio, magazines, and so on, which forms your part of the press. Now this is the role of the press. So what does the press do? Okay, this is a journalist, two journalists are there, so the person has already flew off, and then we are going to have a field day with this. Rival popes, faction, scandals, secrets are usual playbook. It's what that we do. So role of the press is very significant because it contains the process of evaluating, collecting, segmenting, editing, and then publication of the news, which are considered to be scandalous in nature, considered to be incomplete in nature, which are considered to be opinionated, and so on. Now we have press in India. Now James Augustus Hickey is considered to be the father of the Indian press. Now he started the Bengal Gazette in the year 1780, but it was seized in the year 1872 because it was very critical for the British government. Now with the increasing number of newspapers, the government became accountable. Now you know that media acts as the watchdog for the government. Therefore, it brought into action several acts in order to suppress the press. Now, these are the few acts which were formulated by the British government to curb the Indian press. These were your Censorship of Press Act 1799, Licensing Regulations 1823, Press Act of 1835 or Metcalfe, Licensing Act 1857, Registration Act of 1867, Vernacular Press Act 1878. Then you have Newspaper or Incitement to Offences Act 1908 and the Indian Press Act 1910. All of these were implemented by the government so that they could curb the freedom of expression of the press. Now, this freedom of expression of the press was important because it was an important tool which was used to propagate political ideas. So in 1824, Raja Ram Mohan Roy had protested against this resolution. Then we see that a phase of nationalism struck from 1870 to 1918, where more focus was put on political propaganda and education, formation and propagation of nationalist ideologies, training, mobilization, and the consolidation of public opinion. So these are the popular newspapers of early India. So many newspapers had emerged, like you had the Hindu and the Swadesh Samritman under G. Subramaniam Iyer, the Bengali under Surendranath Banerjee, the Voice of India under Dadabhai Nauroji, Amrita Bazar Patrike under Cecil Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh, the Indian Mirror under N.N. Sen, Kesri in Marathi and Maharatha in English under Bal Gangadhar Tilak, then Sadharak under Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Hindu and Advocate under J.P. Verma. Now, the mainstream purpose of these newspapers was to make profit as much as possible and to serve the public. In fact, these newspapers had a wide reach, so they stimulated the culture where the nationalist ideas would be discussed in the library. Now that is what the power of press is. Malcolm X has said that the press is so powerful in its image making that it can make a criminal look like the victim and make the victim look like a criminal. So this is why you have the concept of media trials today. Now this is the press, an irresponsible press. If you aren't careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing this oppressing. Then we have this timeline of journalism. Now, in the 1780s, James Augustus Hickey started the first newspaper called the Bengal Gazette. Now, it was a two-sheet paper which measured 12 inches by 8 inches, and most of its space was covered by advertisements which acted as a source of revenue. It circulated 200 copies, and within 6 years, Bengal Gazette had more than 4 weeklies, and they were launched in Kolkata, then Calcutta. In 1782, Madras Courier was launched, 1791, Bombay Herald, 1792, both in English and Gujarati, we had Bombay Courier. 1799 saw the East India Administration passing regulations to increase its control over the press. Then in 1816, we saw that the first newspaper under the Indian administration had appeared. It was the Bengal Gazette, and along with Gangadhar Bhattacharjee. And it had the reforms which were propagated by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and he himself brought out the magazine in Persian called Mirat-ul-Akhbar. He also published the Brahminical magazine and other magazines which questioned the Christian missionaries of Sri Rampur. In 1822, there was the Chandrika Samachar, and at that time Bombay Samachar was started by Fardunji Mirzaban. Now it gave importance to social reforms and commercial news in Gujarati. In 1866, the first newspaper, Odan Martan, was published, and then in 1832, Bal Shastri Jambekar published the Anglo-Marathi newspaper from Pune. 1830 to 1857, we saw a short-lived newspaper in Gujarati, Marathi, Urdu and Persian. 1857 was a time of uprising, and then you had the Gagging Act, which was passed in 1847, and the Vernacular Press Act, which was published in 1876. Then on in 1861, you have the Bombay Standard and Bombay Times and the Telegraph. 1871 saw the publication of the Indian Statesman, which was later on called the Statesman. Around the same time, Amrita Bazar Patrike was published, and Lokmanya Tilak had also simultaneously started Kesri in Pune. Then 1905, the English and vernacular press we see had become very professional. Now this was the time when political leaders and social reformers were regular in their contributions to the newspapers. So some of the very prominent writers of those time were C.Y. Chintamani, G.A. Nathasen, N.C. Kelkar, Firoz Shah Mehta and Benjamin Horniman. Now the Indian news was supplied by special correspondents, hands out press releases, and Reuters, which is an international news agency, also helped in the publication of the international news. Then the last important phase was between 1920s and 1930s. The newspapers in this period started reflecting political opinion. The Leader and Bombay Chronicle were pro-Congress. The Servant of India and the Bombay Chronicle were a little moderate. The Vande Mataram of Aurobindo Ghosh, Karl of Pune and Sakli of Surat were fiercely nationalist. In 1918, Motilal Nehru started the independent newspaper of Lucknow. Then you had the Young India movement where Mahatma Gandhi became one of their mouthpieces. Then more and more Indians started learning English and many became reporters, editors and even owners. And the Anglo-Indian press began to lose ground except in places like Bombay and Calcutta. And at last, in the year of 1927, G.D. Birla took over the Hindustan Times and placed it on a strong financial footing. And in the same year, S. Sadanand started the Free Press Journal and the Mumbai Class. So with this, we come to the end of our lecture today. Thank you once again.